300 gold-foiled wedding invitations, and every single one carried proof my brother's fiancé was cheating on him. He asked me to design them for free, so I did, just not the way he expected. I'm Lena, the artsy little sister everyone in the family pats on the head but never really sees. When Evan mocked my career, then handed me his wedding like it was charity work, I smiled and embedded the truth right into the design. It took one scan at the engagement party to set everything on fire. Have you ever been underestimated so badly you decided to show them exactly who you are? Let me know. How far would you go if someone pushed you too far? Drop your take in the comments below. They always said I was the creative one, but what they really meant was expendable. When I walked into Rue and Rye, the smell of sourdough and smugness hit me first. The hostess gave me a tight smile and led me through a maze of potted succulents and trendy wall art until I saw them, my family, already seated at the biggest table on the patio. Claire was mid-story, her hands animated, Evan smiling like he knew he was the star of the show. I was waved over like a late-arriving assistant, not the youngest sibling. The place was too Portland. Exposed beams, eucalyptus napkins, cold brew on tap. Too perfect. Claire had clearly chosen it. "Lena," my mother chirped, "there you are, sweetheart. We were just talking about you." "Were you?" I said, taking the seat at the very end of the table, the one next to the potted fern. I slid into my chair and reached for a menu that no one else seemed to need. "Evan has something to share," she added, her eyes sparkling in that overdone way, like she was auditioning for a family holiday commercial. Evan cleared his throat with the dramatic air of someone who loved a captive audience. "Claire and I are getting married." Applause broke out, led by our mother. A few brunchers nearby turned to look. Claire held up her left hand, the diamond catching sunlight like a disco ball. "I know it's sudden," she said, faux humble, "but when you know, you know." Evan leaned over and kissed her cheek. "We didn't want to wait. Life's too short, right?" "Right," I echoed, reaching for my water. It tasted like cucumber and performance. "And," Claire added, pulling a small canvas bag from under the table, "we have a little something for you." The bag was white with gold lettering, "For our artist." I hesitated before taking it. Inside was a mini sketchbook and a pen with their initials engraved on it. "It's custom," she smiled. "We thought it was fitting. You always have your little notebooks, don't you?" I forced a smile. "Sure, thanks." My mom beamed like Claire had just invented kindness. "We were hoping," Evan jumped in, his voice a notch too casual, "you'd design the save the dates. You know, just whip something up." "Maybe even the full suite," Claire said. "Invites, menus, signage, just whatever you'd normally do for a client." "Actually," I began slowly, "I've got a full client roster this summer. I could check availability, but—" "Oh, come on," Mom cut in, waving her hand like I'd suggested something absurd. "It's your brother's wedding. You'll find the time." "She's amazing with fonts," Claire said, nudging Evan. "And gold foil. Your save the date for Grace's gallery show? Stunning." I felt the heat rising in my chest. "Thanks. I do charge for those, though." Evan laughed. "Yeah, but we're family. Think of it as your gift." A fork clattered against a plate. I realized it was mine. I'd been gripping it too hard. "I mean," Claire continued, "it's not like you have to plan a wedding or anything. You're single. You've got the bandwidth." The words stung sharper than they should have, not because they weren't true, but because they were delivered like fact in a quarterly report. "Of course," I said, the smile stretched tight across my face. "I'd love to." My mother sighed with relief. "I knew you'd be supportive." The rest of brunch passed in a blur of mimosa refills and Claire detailing her wedding aesthetic. Words like elegant minimalist and regal farmhouse were tossed around with such authority, I began sketching fake invitation ideas on a napkin just to stay sane. From across the table, I caught my father checking sports scores on his phone. My mom was nodding earnestly as Claire described her vision of mid-century romance. Evan sat back like he'd just negotiated a business merger. They didn't notice I'd stopped eating. After the bill came, Claire suggested a group photo. I stood stiffly between Evan and a flowering shrub, while my mom directed angles like a wedding photographer. As we lined up, Claire leaned in close, her voice just above a whisper. "Make sure it's elegant, Lena. The Martins have high taste." I looked at her, really looked, and smiled wider than I had all morning. "Of course," I said. "It'll be unforgettable." What I didn't say, what pulsed like a baseline under my skin, was that I already knew exactly how unforgettable I'd make it. My studio was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the ceiling fan. Outside, the early summer light was shifting, golden and clear. I stared at my screen, unsure of what I was looking for, but certain now that I had found it. That was when Jared knocked. "It's me," he called through the door. "And I come bearing coffee." I opened the door, and he held up 2 large paper cups like peace offerings. "You look like someone just canceled Christmas," he said, handing me one. "Worse," I muttered. "I think Claire's lying, and not just about fonts." He followed me in and sat on the edge of my sofa while I returned to my laptop. I explained what I'd found: the hotel, the Instagram post, the timing. I showed him the Pinterest board and Becca's old posts. "Do you think she's cheating?" he asked cautiously. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but she's definitely hiding something. And she's not exactly good at covering her tracks when it comes to design. That's the thing about people who love aesthetics. They can't resist leaving their signature." Jared leaned closer. "So, what now? You confront her?" "Not yet," I said, opening Claire's public wedding site. It was still under construction, but the homepage was up, soft pastel tones, slow-loading text transitions. At first glance, it looked ordinary, but then I noticed the faint design element layered into the background, a winding vine motif with 3 small teardrop leaves, subtle but intentional. My heart thudded once, loud and clear. Becca had that exact vine tattooed on her wrist. I had seen it years ago at a summer barbecue. The same stylized leaf pattern now ghosting behind the Our Story section of Claire and Evan's site. I zoomed in. There was no mistaking it. "This isn't just a pattern," I whispered. "What is it?" Jared asked. "It's Becca's tattoo," I said. "Claire used it in her background design." He was quiet for a moment. "Okay, that's not just shady, that's personal." "Exactly. You know," he added, "you always said design reveals who people are, even when they try to hide it." "Turns out she's not just borrowing style," I said. "She's borrowing stories." There was a long silence as I processed what this meant. Then, without speaking, I reached for my sketchbook. Jared raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" I opened to a fresh page, pencil already in hand. "Starting the first draft." I opened Pinterest expecting florals. Instead, I found a breadcrumb trail. Claire's wedding vision board had arrived that morning in an email titled, "Inspo Yay?" complete with multiple exclamation points and 0 explanation. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe soft blush roses, looping serif fonts, or some watercolor backgrounds. What I got instead was a gallery of high drama, gilded arches, velvet ribbons, and calligraphy so exaggerated it felt like it belonged in a medieval manuscript. But one particular image made me pause, not for its beauty, but because I had seen it before. The photo was of a pastel wall with dried lavender bundles and a champagne glass elegantly positioned. In the bottom right corner, a subtle embossed logo read, "The Row House." The name rang a bell, faint but familiar. I minimized the tab and opened a folder on my desktop called Inspiration Fall Clients. Inside, I found it, The Row House. A boutique hotel I had flagged months ago for its design-forward lobby and signature typography, a tall, narrow serif font with a curved capital R. I hadn't shown this to Claire. She'd found it herself, and she hadn't just pinned it, she'd made it a theme. Curious, I jumped over to Instagram and searched Row House Retreat. Most posts were what you'd expect: filtered selfies, bathrobes, and wine glasses against backdrops of velvet drapes. Then I saw one that made my fingers still on the keyboard. A woman had posted a moody sunset photo taken from what looked like the hotel's balcony. The caption read, "Soul Reset with B." The date? Just 3 weeks ago. The username was familiar too, @Beccaros, Claire's stylist friend from college. Her profile was private now, but I remembered her face and her energy, and I also remembered what Claire had said that same weekend. She'd texted me that she was away at her cousin's bridal shower in Seattle. I'd always believed in hidden meanings. Now I was designing one. The glow from my monitor was the only light in the apartment. Outside, the city wound down in its usual summer rhythm, a soft hush of distant sirens, someone's music bleeding faintly through open windows, the occasional crack of laughter on the sidewalk below. But inside, it was quiet, focused, intent. My desk had become a battlefield of mock-ups, each one worse than the last on purpose. One had a clunky script font that made everything look like a party store promotion. Another had a sickly green-gold foil overlay, a shade that reminded me of antique dental work. The worst one used a layout that hadn't been in vogue since 2012. I sent that one to Claire. Her response came within minutes. "This gold feels off, and are these letters supposed to look so heavy?" I smiled. 5 minutes later, "Can you add more breathing room between our names? And the ampersand is outdated. We want something timeless." I opened a new document and replied, "Working on revisions now." In truth, I had already completed 3 flawless versions of the Save the Date design. I wasn't seeking her feedback. I was managing her illusion of control. The final version, the real one, was open in another window. Crisp margins, elegant borders, soft textured blush background with gold flourishes. It looked exactly like something Claire would love. But the real artistry was hidden deep in those flourishes. Embedded in the filigree was a QR code, delicately constructed through micro-manipulated geometry. No boxy square, no pixelated eyes. The code was part of the art, invisible to the eye, unmistakable to a smartphone. I had spent hours testing it, running simulations, changing line thicknesses by fractions of a millimeter. It wasn't just beautiful, it was precise. And it led somewhere. A private web page I had built with password protection, minimal design, and one purpose: to tell the truth. It housed time-stamped screenshots of Becca's Instagram post at the row house, linked with Claire's texts to me claiming she was at a bridal shower. There were metadata details from the photo files, a copy of the background graphic used on Claire's wedding site, matching Becca's tattoo, and a few more cross-references I had pulled together to build a subtle, undeniable case. This wasn't scandal, it was documentation. "You're really doing it," Jared said from the couch, his laptop balanced on one knee. He had come over with takeout and the solemn energy of a man sitting through a court case. I nodded, not looking away from my screen. He let out a low breath. "You know this could explode in your face, right?" I finally turned. "You think I haven't thought about that?" "I think you have. I also think you've never done anything like this before." He wasn't wrong. I had spent most of my adult life letting people talk over me, correct me, reduce me. I was the family footnote, the artistic one, the one with free time, the one who could be leaned on when it didn't cost too much. "I'm not doing it out of spite," I said, clicking through the final compression settings. "I'm doing it so I can stop apologizing for existing." Jared didn't say anything, just stood, walked over, and looked at the screen with me. "I can help test it," he said. We printed the test version on Claire's preferred stock, a lightly textured cream with soft deckled edges. He aimed his phone camera at the design. The link popped up instantly. Click, load, perfect. "Still think it's too risky?" I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's brilliant. I just hope you're prepared for what comes next." I wasn't sure what that would be. I just knew that for once I wasn't waiting for permission. Jared stayed while I worked, quietly tidying the corner of my workspace where mock-ups and old sketch pads had accumulated into architectural chaos. He didn't say much, just handed me a fresh cup of tea when the last one had gone cold, and made sure my laptop stayed charged. That's what I'd always liked about him. He didn't try to fix things unless I asked. He understood the rhythm of quiet rage. As the file was exported, I thought about what it meant to tell the truth. Not yell it, not splash it across billboards. Just design it so well that people couldn't ignore it, even if they wanted to. That was the trick, wasn't it? To make something so beautiful, so precise, that even cruelty had to bow to it. The thing that stung the most wasn't the affair, not even the betrayal. It was the assumption that I'd always say yes, that my work was a favor, my time was disposable, that I'd feel honored just to be included. Maybe they forgot I went to art school. Maybe they didn't care. But I cared. Jared asked once more if I wanted to sleep on it. I didn't. Instead, I sent one final decoy draft to Claire, a version so refined it would stop her from asking more questions, just long enough to get the real one off to the printer. She responded in all caps, "Perfection, finally, knew you could get it there." I imagined her smug smile through the screen. It was a strange feeling, sending the real file out into the world, like folding a note into a bottle and tossing it into the ocean, knowing someone would eventually find it, and maybe even understand. Before Jared left, he paused at the door. "When this blows up," he said, "and it will, just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't apologize." I didn't answer. I just nodded, because I'd already done enough of that for one lifetime. I didn't expect the first RSVP to come in the form of a meme, but I guess that's how the news breaks now. The morning of the engagement party, Portland felt hotter than usual for August. Humid, sticky air clung to every surface, and I was already sweating before I'd even loaded the box into the back seat of my car. The save the dates sat neatly inside, cream envelopes stacked with unnerving precision. Each one was a small masterpiece, a whisper of elegance hiding a scream. I wasn't invited to the actual party, of course not, but Claire had asked, texted, that I swing by and drop off the cards before the crowd arrives. So I did, quietly. No fanfare. I even wore neutral colors like a wedding vendor who knew her place. The rooftop venue was pristine, strings of warm Edison bulbs, curated florals in cement vases, and charcuterie boards so elaborate they looked like they'd been styled by food anthropologists. Claire greeted me with a distracted air kiss, barely glancing at the box. Perfect timing, the photographer's getting some flat lays. She turned away before I could respond. I left the box on the welcome table, right beside a gold-trimmed sign that said, "Love is in the air," in looping cursive. My fingers hesitated on the lid for a moment, as if some part of me wanted to change course, to snatch them back. But I didn't. Instead, I walked away and didn't look back. Back at my apartment, I changed into pajamas and poured a glass of wine. My laptop was open, the analytics dashboard pulled up. The QR code tracker showed nothing, yet. A single scan appeared 15 minutes later. Then nothing. Then another. At 7:32 p.m., the ripple began. "Have you seen this?" Jared texted, followed by a screenshot. It was an Instagram story from someone at the party, an overhead photo of the Save the Date card captioned, "This came with a surprise ending." Then another, a meme, a picture of the card edited with sparkles and bold Comic Sans, comes with gold foil and family drama. The tracker lit up, 17 scans, then 24. 49, 89. The first comments were subtle. Yikes. Someone's got secrets. Becca better hide. Nothing definitive, nothing accusatory, just that particular brand of digital side-eye, the kind that spreads not through outrage, but curiosity. I refreshed the analytics again. The private page had been accessed from 5 different states. Someone had even shared the link on a private wedding subreddit. People weren't just scanning, they were discussing. At 10:46 p.m., Claire's wedding Instagram went dark, all posts archived. Her stories vanished, replaced by a single new slide, a white background with black serif font that read, "Taking some time offline. Thanks for understanding." Jared texted again. "You've gone viral, sort of, in a classy, stationary nerd kind of way." I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen. It wasn't glee that washed over me, not triumph, just relief. A calm, steady breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. I wasn't waiting to be heard anymore. I had spoken, in a language I knew better than words. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 8:14 a.m. I was brushing my teeth, wearing the same pajamas from last night. Evan. I stared at his name for 3 full rings before I answered. "What the hell did you do?" he barked. "People are calling me. My fiancé is crying in the bathroom. Her aunt texted asking if the wedding is still happening. Is this some kind of joke?" I waited until he ran out of breath, then calmly said, "You asked for a flawless design. You got it." There was silence on the other end, then the line went dead. I didn't call back. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked out the window at a group of kids running through a sprinkler across the street. For a second, I thought about the irony. A party full of adults imploding, while children played without a care. We learn how to pretend as we grow up, but the cracks always show. I opened my inbox. Several new messages had come in, some from designers I didn't know, asking about my QR technique. One from a small publication wanting to feature my work in a piece about modern transparency in wedding design. Another from Becca. Her subject line, "You didn't have to do that." But no body text, just that sentence. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I closed the laptop and made another cup of coffee. The sun had risen higher now, flooding my kitchen with a soft orange glow. The cards were out. The damage, if you could call it that, was done. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. Let them whisper. Let them screenshot. Let them wonder. I had told the truth. Beautifully. I spent the rest of the day oscillating between checking notifications and deliberately walking away from my devices. I watered the sad basil plant on my windowsill. I organized the drawer of tea bags I never drink. I watched an old design documentary where someone earnestly argued that Helvetica could save democracy. And still, the view count ticked upward. By mid-afternoon, the Save the Date meme had been reshared with new captions. Better than reality TV. Plot twist. The invitation was the intervention. Someone else had posted side-by-sides of Claire's ring next to Becca's matching gold bracelet, circling similarities in red like they were on a true crime podcast. Jared stopped by with donuts and 2 giant coffees. He flopped onto my couch and raised a brow. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm not okay," I said. He nodded, understanding the space in between. "You know," he added, peeling back the donut box lid, "this might actually get you hired." I laughed. "For what? Betrayal-themed bridal expos?" "Exactly. Truth in design. That's your niche." We ate in silence, the kind that feels like exhaling. I didn't say it out loud, but I was grateful. Not for the chaos, but for the fact that I hadn't faced it alone. Before he left, Jared looked at me over his shoulder and said, "Whatever happens next, you changed something. That counts." I didn't argue. He was right. As the sky shifted toward sunset, I checked Instagram one last time. Claire's mother had posted a cryptic quote over a beach background. "Grace is not always quiet, but it is always earned." No one knew what it meant, but everyone had a theory. Let them talk. I had a new project to start. You haven't really disrupted your family until your mom texts you, "You've ruined Thanksgiving early." That message arrived 2 days after the meme wave, and 1 day before I got a polite but pointed call from my dad. "Your mother thinks it would be good if we all had a talk." Which, in family code, meant, "We want to corner you," but politely. So I drove to the Brooks family house, a pale blue mid-century relic nestled in the quiet suburbs like nothing dramatic had ever occurred there. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and tension. Evan opened the door with the kind of stiffness usually reserved for door-to-door salesmen. Claire was already seated on the cream-colored couch, spine perfectly straight, hands folded in her lap like she was modeling grace under fire. My parents flanked either side of the living room like sentries. I hadn't even taken off my jacket when Evan started. "You need to take it down, all of it. The site, the code, the posts." No one's posted anything, I said. I haven't shared it. Don't play dumb, he snapped. You embedded that code. That's slander. It's not slander if it's true. His eyes narrowed. So you admit it? I stepped inside fully, now closing the door behind me with deliberate calm. Of course I admit it. I designed every inch of that invitation. You asked for something elegant. I delivered. You hacked private photos. They were public. Metadata, timestamps, everything on that site is verifiable. I just compiled what was already there. Claire looked away. I noticed her left hand, bare. The engagement ring, gone. My eyes drifted to the kitchen counter where it now sat alone, glinting beneath a pendant light. I never thought you'd stoop this low, Evan said, his voice cracking slightly. Sabotaging your own brother? Sabotage? I echoed. I gave people access to the truth. What they do with it isn't on me. My mother made a choked noise. How could you do this to your family? I turned to face her. You never asked why I kept my distance. This is why. No one ever listened unless I made it pretty. She opened her mouth, closed it. My father shifted in his chair but said nothing. Claire stood quietly. She didn't defend herself, didn't deny. She just walked into the kitchen, lifted the ring, and placed it gently in the center of the island. Without a word, she walked past all of us and out the front door. No one moved to stop her. The silence that followed was cavernous. Evan looked at me with venom. You're dead to this family. I didn't flinch. I've been dead to this family for years. This was just the eulogy. The words hung there, clean, precise, unflinching. I turned to leave, and as I reached the hallway, my dad's voice stopped me. It really was a beautiful design. I paused but didn't look back. Thanks. I put my heart into it. And I had. Not out of vengeance, not even really for justice, but because it was the only way I knew how to make people see me. Jared texted as I sat in my car. Still breathing? I replied, more than ever. I stayed in the car for a long time after pulling out of the driveway, not crying, not angry, just emptied. The kind of quiet that follows a storm that only you seemed to know was coming. The neighborhood was still, kids riding bikes, a dog barking in the distance, sprinklers ticking rhythmically over perfect lawns. To them, it was just another summer day. But inside that house, something old had finally broken. I thought back to every family gathering where I'd been asked to take the group photo, only to be cropped out. Every compliment disguised as condescension. Lena's so imaginative when what they meant was impractical. I remembered the way my mother would say, you should really try to be part of things more, as if my distance wasn't earned one dismissal at a time. Jared called. I didn't mean to answer, but my thumb brushed the screen. Hey, he said softly. They didn't scream, I replied. Not really, just collapsed inward. Sometimes the quiet ones break the hardest. I exhaled, watching the light shift through the windshield. Claire left the ring on the kitchen island. She didn't say a word. Did she need to? That silence said everything. Jared paused. Are you okay? I think so, but not in a it's over kind of way. More like, I can finally start something new. He let that sit for a moment. You want pancakes? I make excellent post-confrontation pancakes. That made me smile. You always know the right offer. By the time I hung up, I realized something else. I wasn't just the sister who ruined Thanksgiving. I was the sister who finally told the truth. And for once, the silence that followed wasn't punishment. It was peace. When I pulled out of the neighborhood, the sky was streaked with late summer color. Peach and lavender, like something out of one of my old sketchbooks. I drove slowly, no music, windows down. In my rearview mirror, the Brooks house grew smaller and smaller. Eventually, it disappeared entirely. Later that night, I opened my laptop and stared at the homepage of my design site. I hadn't updated it in months. My latest blog post was from early spring, something forgettable about typography trends. I hovered over New Post. Title, When Design Speaks Louder Than Family. I didn't publish it, not yet. But the draft sat there, pulsing like a heartbeat. I scrolled through old project folders, flipping past logos and wedding suites, baby shower invites, business cards for startups that never launched. All of it had felt so small until recently. But now, even my past work shimmered with something I hadn't seen before. A quiet boldness. The QR Save the Date project had taken something from me, yes, but it had also given something back. Not just attention, not revenge, something better. It gave me clarity. They may not understand me, they may not forgive me, but they would never again forget me, and I could live with that. I closed the laptop, brushed the crumbs off my blanket, and turned out the light. The night was still and soft. For the first time in a long time, I didn't dread tomorrow. I welcomed it. Revenge wasn't supposed to lead to a gallery show, but here we are. The gallery smelled like paint, citrus oil, and new beginnings. I stood near the entrance of the Pearl District's most unassuming exhibit space, watching the room fill with voices and foot traffic. Soft jazz played overhead, mingling with the sound of camera shutters and champagne corks. My show, hidden in plain sight, had been months in the making. It centered on the story people couldn't stop talking about 2 years ago, but this time, the narrative was mine. On one wall hung a carefully framed print of the Save the Date suite, gold foil gleaming under directed lights. Right beneath it, a small placard. Invitation, 2022, medium, letterpress foil, embedded QR intention. Art students clustered around that wall, scribbling notes. One even traced the curve of the border in the air, trying to decipher where the code might have been hidden. I smiled quietly. "Looks like you invented a genre," a reporter from a local magazine said. She wore tortoiseshell glasses and carried a pen like it was sacred. Design as confession, storytelling as typography, it's all here. I thanked her, still a little stunned at how natural it now felt to be seen. Jared arrived a few minutes later, hair damp from rain, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. "They ran out of champagne, but I figured you'd want to stay upright tonight," he said. "Wise," I replied, taking a sip. We wandered to the back wall, where my newest collection, minimalist identity posters with QR codes revealing layered personal essays, was drawing curious eyes. "You know," Jared said, "we should do a workshop, design as disruption. You've basically started a conversation the industry didn't know it needed." I nudged him. "You just want to charge students for your donut metaphors. They're award-worthy metaphors." I laughed, truly relaxed. And then I saw him, Evan. He walked in alone, wearing a jacket he hadn't ironed and an expression I couldn't read. There was scruff on his jaw, a hollowness beneath his eyes. He scanned the room and saw me, but didn't approach. Instead, he moved slowly through the crowd, pausing in front of the wedding suite print. He stood there for a long time. I left Jared's side without a word and joined my brother. We looked at the print in silence. For once there were no fireworks, no accusations, no defense. After what felt like minutes, he gave a small nod, just once, and stepped away. That nod was enough. My father showed up not long after. He drifted through the space quietly, lingering near the QR piece. He didn't speak either. But when he caught my eye, he smiled. Tight, but genuine. It was more than I expected. After Evan left, I drifted toward the corner where a small display featured my early design sketches, raw pencil lines, ink smudges, side notes scribbled during late-night bursts of clarity. A young woman stood there, maybe 22, wearing a campus sweatshirt and holding a notebook. "I didn't know design could feel like this," she said, turning toward me. "It's usually so polished, but this makes it personal." "It is personal," I said. "Always has been." She beamed. "I want to try something like this for my thesis. Not this exact thing, obviously, but telling a real story through layers, through the format itself." Her enthusiasm was honest and familiar. I remembered being her once, full of ideas but always trimming the edges to make space for louder voices. "Don't wait for permission," I told her. "Design loud, even if it scares you." She nodded and walked away, and I felt something settle inside me, a closing loop, a full breath. Later, when the crowd began to thin, Jared handed me my coat and grinned. "You didn't punch anyone. That's a win." "Growth," I agreed. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The streets glistened beneath the lamplight. We stood beneath the gallery's awning, watching the city hum past. "I'm proud of you," he said. I looked at him and realized I was too. Not because I'd exposed anyone, but because I'd finally stepped out from under everyone else's shadow. I wasn't just the creative one anymore. I was Lena Brooks, artist, storyteller, unapologetically present. When we parted ways, I walked a little slower through the city, not because I was tired, but because I could. The world didn't feel so heavy now. At home, I lit a candle, brewed tea I'd been saving for a good day, and opened that sketchbook again. The page waited patiently. So did the next chapter. No one said it out loud, but I know they'll remember that invitation, not just for its design, but for what it revealed. Behind every curve of gold foil was a voice I'd been waiting my whole life to have heard. In families, fairness doesn't always come easy, but sometimes understanding doesn't arrive through arguments. It finds its way through quiet truth, shared with care and conviction. What matters most isn't always being accepted right away, but having the courage to stand by who you are. If this story spoke to you, feel free to share your thoughts about a time you had to choose between silence and self. Someone out there might be ready to listen when it matters most.